A very good afternoon. You're watching ET now, and I'm Ajay Sharma. This is a very special telecast we've planned for you on the occasion of 5 years of the goods and the services tax. 2017, when it was launched, it was, the idea behind it was one nation, one market, one tax. Now that we are on the occasion of finishing 5 years of this very important, in fact, being also called India's largest tax reforms, it's time to take stock of the situation. Has it really fulfilled its promise? Is it a success, or is it still work in progress? What exactly have we managed to achieve with this reform for all the stakeholders, the manufacturers, the government, the corporate, all of them? So we have got a very special panel for you to discuss all of that, taking stock of where we are heading from here on. When we started off 5 years back, the collection was almost 97,000. Now we are knocking at 1.4 lakh, and strategists are saying that any number above 1.2, 1.3 lakh crore actually could be the new normal. Three special guests who are joining us today is Pramod Jain from Flipkart. We also have Indra Anand joining shortly from Tata Sons, Dhiresh Bansal from Meesho, and Mahesh Jaisingh, our friend from Deloitte. Gentlemen, all four of you, thanks so much for joining us on this very special show. And you all, of course, bring perspective from various stakeholders' point of view, and thanks so much for agreeing for this special chat. Mahesh, let me start with you, because you're also a kind of a funnel of the industry. You guys have just concluded a very exhaustive survey, talking to hundreds and dozens of your big clients across sectors and different companies about GST, 5 years of GST. Why don't you have the first introduction on, is it a success or is it largely still a work in progress, but the direction is right?
No, I think thank you for having us over and me over for this. Clearly a success, and that's not my words, that's the words of a survey that we conducted with close to about 240 CXO level folks, cutting across very large companies, large as well as MSME companies. So I do see it to be a success for various reasons that we can discuss as we speak today. But what seems to be something which is very topical and important to cover is we even had the council meeting as recent as yesterday, and some of the announcements just reiterate why the verdict, if I were to say, of industry has been that it's a success. So to give numbers, because that's important for the viewers, almost 90% of the survey participants have actually welcomed the GST law, cutting across sectors, Ajay.
Right. In fact, we have Indra Anand also joining now. Indra, thanks very much for joining in. We're waiting for you. You talk to us about the way the run rates actually have been. We started off with, say, 97,000 collections per month. Now we are knocking at 1.4 lakh crore. And has it managed to, in your eyes, GST managed to improve compliance? Because the collections, the way they are improving, is also a function of how compliance is improving across the country.
Certainly, GST has helped us in pepping up the collections, no doubt about it, because it's now with the e-bills coming in and the e-invoicing, the entire system has pepped up. So certainly this goes a lot to contribute to the kitty. Hello?
Right. I thought there was a bit of a technical glitch. All right. Let's also get in Dhiresh Bansal from Meesho on the conversation. Actually, in fact, for online manufacturers, and the idea was that from all nooks and corners of the country, manufacturers and traders would be able to really join the, because of GST, in the organized trade kind of a pattern, because they were kind of not being excluded in the same wholehearted way in the overall kind of trade which is happening across the country. And GST was also a step in that direction to include all these small traders and merchants across the country onto the organized bandwagon, and also, of course, in the contractors as far as the taxes go. What are your thoughts, especially from the MSME, the medium and the small enterprises, Dheeraj? Do you think we have managed to achieve that so far in the first 5 years?
Sure. Thanks, Ajay. And I think maybe some stats that we have compiled of our own with help of various agencies. I think in India there are about close to 50 million MSMEs, and of those, at this point in time, something like 10% or close to that are kind of registered on the GST network, which clearly shows that there has been progress in that direction. There is obviously some more work required. And there was also need for kind of bringing in, just parity of rules between online and offline, which again is something that this GST Council has made a decision on, and we have kind of been very positive and sanguine about that.
Pramod, you're also at Flipkart, work with merchants across the country. What is your feedback so far of the way things have progressed on GST front?
Thanks, Ajay. So our experience with GST, it had been a fantastic legislation, and how it has been enabled and implemented over the last 5 years. In a country as complex and as big as India, it had been a fantastic journey. And specifically referring to what GST Council decided yesterday regarding bringing in parity for sellers on online platforms with the offline sellers, that's a huge win. And this is what we had been as an industry advocating for last about 2.5 years. So the good thing is the government is listening and taking fast actions on that. And in our view, this whole exemption for compulsory registration for sellers who want to onboard e-commerce platforms, that should enable a lot of these weavers, handicraft makers, homemakers who do not want to do a full-time job or full-time business. They will be able to come on the e-commerce platforms and sell more from here.
Right. Dheeraj, in fact, I'd like to come back to you on that point of the, sorry, the 47th GST meeting which was held, and the extension of this threshold composition benefit for online sellers. Because online sellers so far did not really enjoy threshold composition exemption of about 40 lakhs. Do you think now there could be some kind of a parity which will eventually emerge between online and offline gradually?
So maybe I can take that. I think
Sure.
What we have seen in our kind of own data is that almost 60% of sellers, when they get to the point of registering for or providing their GST details, used to kind of drop off. And these were primarily sellers which were, small sellers below that 40 lakh limit that kind of exists in the offline world. And when we kind of asked them the question on what's kind of prohibiting them, I think they did kind of have that initial mental barrier of, there being some additional compliance requirements, there being some additional kind of bandwidth of theirs that would be consumed within this. So I think with the kind of small seller economy that we have, I think by making sure that there is parity between offline and online regulations, we hope to see a lot more sellers to kind of start selling online. And anyways, as COVID has kind of taught us, that's becoming the channel of the future. And more number of small sellers can become active online and start selling online, they will be able to kind of reach to different parts of the geography. So while I think the composition allows for intrastate at this point in time, with kind of additional sales, maybe they will also see the benefit of selling interstate and then register for GST. So on the whole, it would also kind of add both from an economy perspective as a multiplier effect, as well as for people to kind of eventually become registered on GST and kind of start selling interstate as well.
Right. Mahesh, in fact, I'd like to come back to you for a moment and understand out of the entire universe of corporates which you spoke to regarding this, what was the feedback like in terms of compliance, ease of doing business? They have many of them. For them, it's like getting into a organized way of on the taxation front, mainly led by technology. In fact, the role of technology overall. What are the kind of feedback you gathered around it?
Well, clearly on the positives, the industry has experienced the one nation, one tax From a supply chain perspective, the cascading effect of tax has been done away with. You've got all of the forms, Form F and the legacy taxes that is also moved away. And on the compliance front, like you pointed out, technology's played a huge role. 80% of our participants actually gave it a thumbs up of how the government has actually probably gone faster than industry in embracing tax technology. And I think also the key benefit from large corporates in particular having multi-state operations is that you no longer have a compliance format and procedure in state A different from state B and state C. So you have a common technology platform, which is something that has benefited industry. And as Indra earlier said, the e-way bill and e-invoicing has, of course, been a bit challenging initially, teething troubles, but on balance, welcome. Having said that, everybody is also in the moment of pausing, reflecting, and looking forward at the 5th year of GST. I think from an ease of doing business perspective, industry hopes that the engagement, which has been a thumbs up, around 60% have said the government done a great job to be engaging and working proactively on technical issues. And the accessibility has been across the states and the center as well. So they hope that continues. There's also some hope and belief that there should be a little bit more looking at some path-breaking changes, which are not necessarily revenue impact. So revenue neutral changes, if they could be brought in, you have certain deemed supply between a branch and head office, could be for services or goods. For goods, we all understand, but for services, it could be a pretty endless debate on two aspects on what is actually a supply or not. Industry is saying if we pause and we realize that there's really no revenue to the government, is it not time ripe to review some of these deemed supply transactions that is just creating a bit of disputes and interpretation? The second aspect that they do hope is a little bit more on the working capital front. What can the government do? The government has been investing a lot across sectors. You look at the PLI scheme, you look at other schemes in getting in money into the market in the priority and of the government. But is it also an opportunity to look at GST credits that a company has? Is there a way that you can give them back in cash? So to me, these two things stand out from an ease of doing business. And I must add one quick point that there are certain input credit restrictions that were there and grandfathered from the pre-GST laws, whether it is in relation to immovable property or in relation to setting up of infra and certain personal consumption tax, personal consumption related services. I do think that industry's view is that isn't it time to let go of certain restrictions? And since you're at a record collection, keep the law simple and let the compliance, which has already taken over to give your record collections, continue that way.
In fact, let me take some of the points which you just raised as feedback from the industry ahead with Indra. Indra, litigation or dispute resolution is one area even we here at ET Now, when we speak about this subject to many of the corporates, keeps coming up recurringly around the discussion of GST, especially because there's also lack of standardization across a lot of states in terms of rulings. And, you know, the feedback we get that we need to find out quick dispute resolution mechanisms because it's still early years in GST implementation. And if we don't do it, then over the years, things will start piling up. What are your thoughts on this area?
That's a very good point because you really look at it, we are talking about a uniform tax. Just not uniformity in tax, but also uniformity in the approach in which it is going to be interpreted. So today, with moving with the same idea, we need to have some consensus on the views which various advanced rulings, plethora of them, have formed over a period of time. We hope this does not continue, and there is some scale of modality in the entire approach to get a uniformed consensus. Otherwise, it's going to be perpetual litigation. So you are today in a very nascent stage when we're looking about the initial 5 years. We were only hazarded with complying with the compliance burden. So going forward, it's going to translate into something which is going to be interpretational in nature, which is going to be very subjective. We hope there is some kind of threshold which we set here to look, pause, and take a very unified approach coming here. We are happy to learn, and when so many proactive circulars have come forward, clarifications come. So also when it talks of litigation, I think we are lagging behind, no tribunal in sight so far. Very heartening to learn that soon, by the first week of August, we should be somewhere in place since the GOM is coming up. And by the next council meet, they will have some idea, thought process on that. Just looking forward, because really be tapping doors at the High Court at this stage. To stop that, we need addressal at this level itself. So that's my view on this. That's the industry view. We're looking forward on the tribunal this fact.
Right. And since we are talking about improvements or areas of improvement, and working capital is an issue, overall issue in capital management, which is much more acute as far as the MSME universe of corporates is concerned. Pramod, would you like to take that one? The issue of working capital management and how, because of working capital gets blocked, the entire capital management for a MSME goes for a toss, and many of them, it actually becomes an existential crisis. How can we improve upon that in order to foster the entire MSME ecosystem further going forward in India?
Certainly, Ajay. So blockage of working capital for MSMEs is certainly a very big issue for the small and medium-sized manufacturers, traders, and a lot of other companies. Now, there are a few solutions that the government probably can look at, and this is what we had been advocating as part of policy recommendations. One, the CGST and IGST, which are both union levies, money goes to the central government. As of now, those are both tracked at the state level. Now, even under the pre-GST regime, there was a centralized service tax registration concept, which allowed us to pool in the credits for all over India and utilize them wherever we would like to use them. So if the similar concept can be brought in, and where the and it's not a restriction coming out of the law, it's more coming out of the procedures or how GSTN currently is configured, where the state credit, CGST or IGST credit, which is accumulated in one state, can be allowed to be transferred to another state. That should not require any change in the law, it's just a procedural change. But it can help the MSMEs and large companies also to unblock a big chunk of the working capital, which is locked there. The second piece which can be looked at, and it should be just seen like, transfer of money from one pocket to another, and maybe a welcome change if I have to see. In the last budget in February, the government has allowed transfer of cash balances from one ledger to another. Hopefully that this was just a stepping stone, and the next move that we will see will be moving to electronic credit ledgers also. The second move that we are thinking, if the government can look at, the IGST, which is paid on imports, if that can also be allowed to be paid through the input tax credit, which is accumulated. Again, this goes to the union government, so it should not impact the revenues of the states. And third, which could be a path-breaking or an innovative solution, if we can build the infrastructure around that, is allow transfer and trading in GST credits. So where a company which has a built-in credit sells the credit to another company which is going to pay in cash, and they negotiate a price for that. And the credit moves from one company to another company, and the working capital is unblocked for the company which needs it, and it goes to another company, and they might buy that script at a discount. So that could be something more breaking and help the industry at large. The current problem that a lot of companies face is it's their money. 18% is a huge amount, and especially in the companies which are seasonal businesses, companies which have a long gestation period in building up the factories and the installation of plant and machinery there, inoperative companies, loss-making companies. So it's a big amount which gets blocked there. And it's a revenue neutral thing for the government as far as government is concerned, but can help the industry to unblock and grow at a much faster pace.
That's correct. That's a very important point. In fact, it will help, very large part of the MSME universe to manage their capital much more efficiently, because they depend on debt also, in order to really go forward with their manufacturing practices. Let me come to Dhiresh now. Dhiresh, what are the two areas where you would like to see improvement or challenges need to be addressed in a more urgent manner, by which, say, in the next couple of years, the full efficiency and the potential of the intention behind launching this reform actually could be unlocked?
Sure, Ajay. And I think while it's a first step, I think we still have conditions, or possibly will have conditions around the sales being limited to intrastate, right? So with the exemption that will now kind of come in, there is the limitation on kind of the smaller sellers who are below the turnover of 40 lakhs or in the composition scheme case below the turnover of 1.5 crores, they will continue to be only allowed to sell within the state. I think over a period of time, as the consensus between states also kind of emerge, one good thing that could happen or which we would sort of hope for is if interstate sales are also allowed for these small sellers, because a seller sitting in Gujarat, for instance, might want to sell to, say, Karnataka and many such permutations and combinations. So if we truly want a sort of single country, single system, then we would urge the stakeholders to also think about interstate at the right point in time.
Mahesh, what about you? We just have a few more minutes left in the show. Let me also get in. What are the areas of improvement? Because you work with all the stakeholders very closely, you would like them to be streamlined so that full potential could be unlocked.
I think Indra mentioned it, I think to an extent Pramod did, that now we are in the year of audits and assessment. What industry is hoping for from a certainty perspective and an ease of doing business is audits and this construct. So today, the way the law is, it's a central GST law and a state GST law. It's a constitutional framework, perfectly fine. But I'm tagged to one set of officers, and that's how it should be, so that every SSE knows who he needs to be explaining his tax positions to. We've seen a recent trend and an increasing trend in some cases where there's a cross empowerment, and if you're with the center, the state authorities walk in for their audit or a scrutiny, and vice versa. Nothing fundamentally wrong, but if there could be a bit more streamlining to avoid duplication, that's ask number one. Ask number two is also to embrace that as you're moving to a pan-India operation and having presence in multiple states, do you really need registration with the premises in each state? It's heartening to note the Parliamentary Standing Committee report less than 10 days ago has actually recommended a review on that front. So that's the second one. And I do think the tax tribunal aspect is a low-hanging fruit, and it's the finance minister, honorable finance minister mentioned in 1 month, the GOM is expected to give a report and a decision will be made. So I'm looking more at an implementation standpoint as to what industry would expect, because some of the other points which I'm hoping are also addressed, which Pramod covered, I covered on ease of doing business, working capital, that may be in at least a 1 to 2 year horizon, but a 6 to 1 year horizon would be more implementation focus there.
Indra, you can have the last word because you're also actually representative of the industry on the steps taken so far, because actually on ground there have been very material significant improvements and changes and the numbers speak for themselves, but perhaps there is a lot to be achieved. It's a very complex and very complicated reform in the first place. Areas of immediate work to make it much more smoother.
I think wherever it is revenue neutral and it is really getting stuck in the system, so there is where, which things can turn on immediately. So those kind of issues wherein the revenue is not going to be much impacted, however, the benefit to the society at large would be really tremendous. Those are things which need to be really going and being addressed at the topmost level. As we earlier mentioned, setting up of tribunals, which is an immediate ask. We learn that there will be some tribunals addressing point of sale issues. Typically, I think that is where we are looking forward. So the immediate ask, if you tell me today appeals being settled at the first level and looking forward to go to courts, this will really resolve the problem. This is an urgent ask. So with this, I think the larger aspect of GST moving forward smoothly, the way it was being handled so far, I hope we continue to look forward with a similar steps which we need to still climb. We hope with the government support on the similar pretext will be shared with us in the future course as well.
Excellent. Thanks very much. Indra, Pramod, Dhiresh, Mahesh, all of you, thanks so much for analyzing the nuances and the journey of GST, India's largest tax for the first 5 years, areas of immediate improvement, and what we can look forward to, even from all the stakeholders, including regulators and the government. Thanks so much for your take today. With that, it's a wrap on the show. Thanks very much for watching. Goodbye.